ጤና ይስጥልኝ ተመልካቾቻችን ይህ በዳያስፖራ ቲቪ የተዘጋጀ የሚቀርብላችሁ የጌራ-ሾው ነው። የጌራ-ሾው ላይቭ ፕሮግራም በዋሽንግተን ዲሲ የተዘጋጀ የሚቀርብላችሁ ነው። ዛሬ ፕሮግራማችንን ጀምረናል። የተለያዩ እንግዶች አሉን። በመላው ዓለም የምትገኙ ተመልካቾቻችን እዚህም በእንግድነት የምትገኙ አድማጮቻችን ዛሬም ፕሮግራም ለመታደም እዚህ አብራችሁን ስለተገኛችሁ ከልብ እያመሰገንኩኝ እንግዲህ እንደሚከተለው አድርጌ እንግዶቼን አስተዋውቅና ወደ ፕሮግራማችን እንገባለን ማለት ነው። የመጀመሪያ እንግዳዬ ከትውልዷ ከጊኒ ኮናክሪ ነው። አማርኛ ስለማትናገር የሚሆነው ፕሮግራሙ በእንግሊዘኛ ነው። ይሄንን የምንነጋገረው እንግዲህ ስለ አፍሪካ ኤነርጂ ቻሌንጅስ በተመለከተ ነው። አንዳንድ ነገር የምናወራው ከእንግዳዬ ጋራ እንግዳዬን አስተዋውቃችኋለሁ። ፕሮግራማችን አሁን በድጋሜ ከሷ ጋር የሚሆነው በእንግሊዘኛ ነው ማለት ነው። ስለምትከታተሉን በያላችሁበት ሆናችሁ በጣም እያመሰገንኩኝ ፕሮግራማችንን እንጀምራለን። እሺ እንግዲህ ስለ መጀመሪያው እንግዳዬ ትንሽ ኢንሳይት ልስጣችሁ ስለ አፍሪካ ኤነርጂና ከዛ በኋላ ወደ መድረኩ ጋብዛታለሁ ማለት ነው። Africa is a home of more than 1.2 billion people and about 15% of the world population. More than a century after invention of light bulbs, Africa is still known as the dark continent, as only 25 to 35% of the population has access to electricity. While about 2/3 of Africans live in area with access to an electric grid, in some countries 7 in 10 citizens, as many as 9 in 10 citizens in rural area do not have access to electricity. In countries like Burundi, Chad, Liberia, Malawi, and South Sudan, less than 10% of the population have access to electricity at all. Today in sub-Saharan Africa, even if slightly more citizens are living in the zones with electricity service than in the past. Not all households connected to an electric grid enjoy a reliable supply of electricity from the connection. Also, not all citizens with access to an electric grid are actually connected. According to the research made by Abrometer, on average across the 36 African countries, only 4 in 10 Africans enjoy reliable power supplies. According to the World Bank report, 25 nations in sub-Saharan Africa are facing crisis due to the problem in the energy infrastructure that are connected to insufficient capacity, poor reliability, and high electric costs. Overall, according to the International Energy Agency report, 625 million people are without power in sub-Saharan Africa alone. That's 68% of the population. Why over 600 million people in sub-Saharan Africa are still without power? How come Africa, with all its resources, still keeps people in the dark? Ladies and gentlemen, today on Gera-show, we are going to discuss Africa's energy challenge and the way forward with the special guest, Ms. Binta Terrier. Ms. Binta Terrier is an economist. She is also the founder and executive director of Partnership League for Africa's Development, or PLAD, and Africa Black Syndicates. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Ms. Binta. It's a great honor to have you, Ms. Binta, to the Gera-show.
Well, the honor is mine. Thank you for having me.
Ms. Binta, tell us how the lack of electricity access to the public of Africa is affecting today.
As you just said it, very few people have access to electricity, which is really a shame because it shouldn't be the case. Mm-hmm. In the 21st century, nobody should be in the dark. Nobody should be disconnected from the rest of the world. No electricity means no internet connection. It means no factories. It means no street lights, nothing. And that should not be acceptable. As we have learned, we in the Western world, mm-hmm. the UK, the US, France, Germany, all these superpowers only developed after they had secured a steady sources of energy. There is no way no way possible that Africa will develop, enjoy a sustainable development without energy. It just is not going to happen. So either we face the reality and do something about it, or we stay the way we are. As you know, wherever you go in Africa, there's no light. It comes 5 hours, and 2 hours, and it disappears. Why would our people be in this darkness? Why? We have the sun, we have waterfalls. The DRC is Inga. I don't know if any of you have heard of Inga. The waterfalls of Inga, if developed, could provide more energy than the three gorges of China. DRC alone, the Democratic Republic of Congo alone, can electrify the entire African continent. So why are we in the dark? Why? In the 21st century, why are we in the dark? We have more sunlight than any planet on Earth, than any continent on the planet, I meant. Africa has, we are close to the equator. You're talking about solar, you're talking about renewable energy. Why don't we have electricity? Why?
I was going to come to you to those natural resources, actually, but before that, I want you to explain to us a little bit about what's the relationship between poverty and accessing the electricity.
Well, the relationship is simple. If you don't have a steady source of energy, nothing works. You cannot have factories, you cannot have infrastructure. If you don't have factories to employ people, if you do not have infrastructure, how can you move goods from the rural area to the cities? How can people move around? How can the eastern part of, say, Ethiopia connect with the western part of Ethiopia in a very easy way? In Ethiopia, I mean, you have like 110 million people, the population, right?
It's getting there.
Okay, it's getting there. It's close to that. Yeah. So how do you connect east, west, south end of Ethiopia together? How do you bring, if you say, for instance, somebody in the east or the north of Ethiopia cultivate, say, tomatoes. You have tons of tomatoes you want to bring to the market in Addis. How long does it take to get the tomatoes there? If you don't have electricity, it means you don't have refrigeration. If you don't have refrigeration, you cannot store the tomatoes. If you don't have good roads, you cannot have good roads if you don't have traffic lights. It's all interconnected. One cannot go without the other. You cannot have development without energy. So it fits into each other, and that creates sustained poverty.
So what do you think the challenge is now? Because you just mentioned that Africa is a rich continent with all the waterfalls, sun, forests, and what's the challenge?
Quite frankly, as an observer, I think it's a coordination failure. We are not coordinated. I think every country is trying to do its own thing. Every leader, African leader, is trying to do its own thing. But there's no coordination of efforts. You have the European Union that is coordinating their effort for the interest of all Europeans. You have the United States of America that is coordinating its effort for the interest of the entire United States of America. You have North America doing the same thing. You have Asia doing the same thing. What are we doing in Africa? So we don't lack the competency, as people made us believe that we don't. We have very smart people. We have younger generation of Africans who are very savvy, very smart, very quick learners. But we do not, we are, how do I put it? I'll get into trouble for saying this.
Or coordinate.
Yeah, we are not organized. I really think it's a lack of organization. I think if our leaders and our communities and our people think it through, we can fix this. We don't even need foreign aid to fix our problems. It is a mental state. We believe we need aid from somebody. No, we can do it ourselves.
So what does it require to address this issue?
Again, coordinating our efforts. We have to communicate. We have to accept. You see, one thing I've learned in this part of the world, because I came here when I was very young, is that if there's a problem in the family, if you don't recognize the problem, you will not find the solution to the problem. If you are an alcoholic, everybody sees you are an alcoholic and you don't admit you are an alcoholic, you will not go to AAA, seek for help. You see, one thing is now we have all recognized that the electricity problem in Africa needs to be addressed. But what are Africans doing about it? What are the leaders in DRC who have most of the waterfalls doing about it? Are they coordinating? Are they discussing this with the rest of the African countries? Because if one resource is really based in one single country, and that resource, every other 53 or 52 African countries can benefit from it, I think that our leaders should discuss this and work it through. You see, we have to do this in an inclusive way. And then we have the sun, we have renewable energy. Why is it that we are letting, say, you know, Chinese dumping solar panels in Africa? Why can't we manufacture our own solar panels? Why do we believe that we can do this? Why can't we manufacture our own solar panels? Why can't we transfer or seek to get this technology for solar, teach our youth, and let them do the work? You know, Gera, in 2020, Africa is going to have 42.5 million youth looking for jobs. Okay. Africa has the highest level of youth unemployment than any other continent on the planet. So this is a serious problem that we're going to be facing as of 2020. So everybody should really think this through. You know, Gera, when I saw these young people's bodies in the European beaches, you remember?
Yes.
The boat people, these young people who died in those seas. I am a mother of 3. When I saw that, I couldn't sleep. Because one of those kids could have been my own children if I wasn't living in America. Right? So the question I asked myself, why is this only happening to Africans? Don't we value, doesn't African kids' life have a value for us? How can we see this and not do something, not mobilize? Why didn't the entire African continent mobilize to do something so we never see something like this ever again? So for me, that's what really motivated me to seek out experts in the US, take them to Africa, teach African youth the technology, the solar technology, so that one day, hopefully in the very near future, we will have in each African country a group of individuals who knows what solar panel means. You ask anybody in Africa today, how is a solar panel constructed? They couldn't tell you. Yet you have many homes in Africa. We are taking this from China or from wherever we can. We are installing it in houses, in schools, in offices, in a way that is not even well done in most part. And then we have batteries that do not last for more than 3 months because the panels are cheap, but the batteries are expensive. Because if you keep changing them every 3 months, every 6 months, then you are hooked like you are hooked on a drug. This needs to stop. And the only way to stop this is to make sure our people can master this technology. You know what I found out recently is that Microsoft will not release any of the apps we have until our youth in Africa test them and tell them it's okay to release. Did you know that?
No.
Okay.
That's very interesting, right?
You see, this iPhone you have and the iPads everybody here has, you know what it's made of? The coltan that comes from DRC. If it wasn't for the coltan, we wouldn't have iPads, we wouldn't have iPhones. So why don't we have electricity? Why don't we have computers in our high schools, in our elementary schools? You see, this is once you start thinking these things through, it started to bother you.
Yeah.
And you stop seeing African as Ethiopia, Guinea, Ghana, Mali, Senegal. You start wondering, you know, all this. So I guess I've reached that stage where I don't see African countries anymore as a single individual African country. You see, for me, it's the same thing. The problems are the same. And I'm just hoping that many people start thinking that way. Because once you start thinking that way, our problems will be solved.
That's right. That's right. Now let's talk about this organization that you founded and leading, about PLAD and syndicated blog. So basically, you just told us, what makes you the initiative that you had, and when that established, and since you established that organization, have you ever got a chance to go back to Africa? And if you did, what kind of challenges go through that?
Again. Partnership League for Africa's Development, I have a friend. She was a U.S. ambassador in Africa, in one of the African countries. She's the one who actually helped me pick that name. I couldn't figure out, I didn't know how to call this NGO. I just had an idea, I didn't know what to call it. So we started again, as I said, that we are disorganized, no matter where we are, Africans.
Right.
We all mean well as an individual person, as an individual group, but we lack this focus, this way of putting our effort together. I have friends from Israel, they are very, very funny. They say, look, I don't like going to Israel because I don't like what I see, but when you come to Israel, I am there for Israel. You see, so then I said to myself, with some colleague of mine, I said, well, why can't we do the same thing? We don't have to like our leaders, we don't have to like them, we don't have to agree with them, we don't even have to like each other. Why can't we just agree on one thing, that will represent our continent, will be advocate for our people? So that's how this PLAD came about. We decided to create an NGO that will look at Africa as a continent, as one, not as individual countries. And then we start to advocate for the people on the continent. So PLAD started as an advocacy group. There was land grab. Land in Ethiopia was being sold or deeded for 100 years, 50 years in my country, Guinea, in Cameroon, in Liberia, in all over Africa. So when we saw that, we thought that is not good. And maybe our people don't understand what they're doing. Maybe they mean well. I'm sure they meant well, because no African leader will start deeding the land for 60, 70 years to foreign corporations if we knew really what the consequences will be. So we said what we should do maybe is to start educating our people, this is not the way to go. Nobody does this. So we started advocating against land grab. We called it Stop African Land Grab. And we brought Femi Kuti, some African artist, and an Ethiopian artist, and then we brought another Senegalese artist here in DC at Warner Theatre. We did a concert, and then we made DVDs. We sent it to every African leader, explaining why we think you should stop this. And so some did respond to us.
They did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Some responded to us, some thought what we're doing is good, at least we are interested in what is happening in our nations, even though nobody told us we're going to stop it, but we noticed a decline. So for me, that is already a success. And then after that, it was also dumping of medications in African countries that have expired. You go to the markets, people buy prescription drugs which have completely expired. And then you have Depo-Provera. Women are being injected, sterilized without their consent, without even knowing what they're taking in their body. So that's how PLAD started. To advocate against our people, and we still do it. Yeah, to advocate, yeah.
So some critics, they say that all these topics or all these issues are related to the human rights issues in Africa as well. And what your organizations systematically do to address those human rights issues as well?
That's what we did, for instance, in that Depo-Provera thing, was to even, with some other NGOs here, it's called Rebecca's Project. We went all the way to US Congress to ask for the US Congress to really look into this, and some congressmen came and talked to us. And Rebecca's Project was really the leader of that, what we were supporting. PLAD was working with them, because the leader of, the representative of Rebecca's Project was from Ghana, Kwame Mfosu. He fought very hard for that. And then we met with some congressmen, and the success story on that one was that now that injection, that Depo-Provera injection, they had to put that is harmful to you. So the consumer is aware that if you use that product, it is harmful to your health. That was not there before.
That was not there before.
So at least now people will know what they're taking in their bodies. So that's one thing. And the second thing was also this, that's a human right there already. You have the right for medication, you have a right to education, and then you have a right to know what you take in your body. So that's part of it. So you see, we cannot be political. Our NGO is not a political NGO. We just try to help. We'll work with anybody, any leader, any institution, any group. We don't discriminate. As long as it's in the best interest of Africa, we'll work with you, no matter who you are. Now, if it's not in the best interest of Africa, then we'll also say that. And that's why you probably saw in our blogs, we did go after some people, like the Gates Foundation, when they were dumping GMOs in Africa. We tried to say that that is not good. And also, Mr. Tony Blair, who was going around and criticizing our leaders that were corrupted. We said, well, maybe it's good to look also what Mr. Tony Blair is doing.
That's right.
So, we have not seen any African leader who is going around and saying the UK Prime Minister is corrupted. So why should the UK Prime Minister be going around and accusing African leaders of being so corrupted? He's going to teach them how to be honest. So that's another sort of human rights issue there. And we made it sure that he has no right to speak on behalf of our own people. Africans should speak for Africans. We don't want Tony Blair or Bill Gates to be talking about Africans.
That's true.
So that's...
We have to be able to communicate each other.
Exactly. We have to be able to communicate with each other.
How about from the investor side, your organization is doing to...
Well, the infrastructure side is when President Obama's Power Africa initiative was being put in place, I had a chance to have a discussion on Voice of America with Whitney Schneidman, who was the advisor of President Obama at the time. And I brought the idea that it's great that President Obama is taking this initiative, but we like very much when they go to African countries to employ African youth also in this. You see, because there's this tendency where countries come in and install things for us, build our roads, build our railroads, and build our whatever we need to be built, but then there's nobody on the ground who's involved in the process, who learns through the process, so that we can at least maintain what is being built. You see, so that is something that we think also our leaders, if they're listening to your show, for instance, hopefully they are, to say, well, you know what, if you're going to come and build something for us, we like also some of our engineers to be part of this building, so that we gain also some knowledge in that technology, because infrastructure, you're talking about railroad, you're talking about, airplanes, you're talking about the whole gamut of it, not just roads. And also engineering in the electricity, renewable electricity.
That's right.
Exactly. So we want people, when they come in, for people to be involved. So.
You also are coordinating with one of our filmmaker, Salome Mulugeta, to do documentary film regarding these issues. And tell us about that a little bit.
So
where are we on that?
Okay, so what happened is that, I don't know, I've just short a story of this. I was in India, and I was in a hotel one night. I woke up, and then, jet lagged, and I saw light all over a valley. I said, my goodness, this must be a mirage, because I didn't see any houses when I was coming in. Light all over. So I asked somebody I was with, and they told me that it is solar light. I was so curious, I went down there to look at it, and I saw how this was put together. I asked somebody, and then they said, yeah, actually a gentleman named Dr. Richard Kump was here. He taught us how to do this. And this was a village where people were not highly sophisticated at all. Then the first thing that came to my mind, I said, well, we could do this in Africa too. I came back and I Googled Dr. Kump. I found him, and he would meet me because Africans are not serious. He didn't want to talk to me.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, he wouldn't talk to me.
That's one of the challenges that you face.
That's one of the challenges we face, that we're not serious. So, in any case, I insisted, and at my own cost, I flew to Boston. I met with him. I begged him to come. I said, okay, I will bring you to Africa. Please teach my people how to this technology. We actually organized here a discussion here, and then I invited some African representative in DC.
Okay.
We took the workshop. I even learned myself how to put a solar panel together. Then when that worked, we said, well, now we have to do this in Africa. So we went to Liberia with him, to Ghana, and to Guinea. And Guinea, we used Guinea as really a prototype, as a showcase. And it worked. Within 2 years, Dr. Comp's people went to Guinea, taught 14 African youth who did not know engineering at all how to compile solar panels, how to install it, and how to make it work. And it worked. The cost was $30,000. So for $30,000, if you can teach really, truly 14 people engineering skill, MIT level engineering skill, at less than $1,000 per person, then I thought this is something we should be able to replicate in every African country.
That's right.
And the only way to replicate it is for people to see it, that yes, we can do this, and that cheaply too. So Salome agreed as a member of the diaspora to do this documentary, to direct it pro bono.
Wow.
She was not paid a penny for it.
Let's give it a round to Salome then.
Yeah.
It's a great thing.
Yes, she was not paid a penny for that. And she brought a very well-reputed cinematographer from Hollywood, Pedro Gomez Malian. He came for 3 days. He was very busy, but he took time off, he came. And then with a crew of 7 people, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Okay.
All we did was go around DC and film, replicate some scenes that we do were in Africa. And that documentary right now is in New York. They are editing it. So it should be finished by the end of June. And I hope, as the producer, the one who financed it too, I hope that we'll be able to show it at the UN, and we'll be able to show it also to our leaders in Addis Ababa, during the head of states meeting.
Head of states meeting, okay.
Because I think they should see this, because if they see this, they say this is something that we can do. I think this will help address the youth unemployment a little bit. Because this is really, you can create electricity in a very cheap way, you can create jobs, because then we become self-sufficient, independent while they're doing something. Even though in many of our countries, like in Ethiopia right now, the government is working very hard to bring more energy in the country, but it's not going to be sufficient because the population is just growing.
It's growing.
It's growing. I think it's good to have the solar energy as a backup, or as something at least that can supplement the grid.
That's right.
See, one should not exclude the other. You see, when the grid cannot provide the output that is needed, the solar can supplement that. You see, so it's very compatible. And that's what we want to make our people see and understand, and particularly show them how it can be done. For instance, my dream would be for Addis Ababa to be the center of empowering that capacity to the youth for all of Africa. You see? You see, so that if I have, instead of my running around begging solar scientists to come to each African country and do this teaching, if we could have the center in Addis Ababa, and then we take kids from Guinea, from Cote d'Ivoire, give them a sort of scholarship.
Yeah, it's kind of pilot program.
Exactly. They go to Addis Ababa and learn this, and then go back to their country and do it. And once every country has a group that is really, really capable, then we form our own first African solar industry. You see? That's wonderful, right? Ms. Binta, you really do an amazing job. And again, we're about to wrap up our program, but before I do that, I want to ask you this. What your organization or yourself asking from this African diaspora, or for the people who's a friend of Africans at this We really need to focus on our energy problem. Because unless we have energy, we cannot develop. It is a fact. So we need all the support we can get. As for the diaspora, again, if you come from a small village, you come from a big village, you come from a big town, just remember, 5, 6, 7 of you, $30,000 is enough to teach and empower people in that village. When you go back home on vacation, you send your children, they will have electricity at home.
They can charge their cell phones.
Exactly, they
TVs.
can charge their cell phone, you know, and can stay connected with you.
We enjoy all the privilege that we have here, you know, when we go back to Africa.
Exactly. You see, you do it for yourself. We do it for ourselves.
That's right.
You know? So let's think of it that way.
Let's work together.
Yes, exactly.
Ms. Binta, it's
you.
a great honor to have you on the Gera-show. Thank you so
very
much.
much. Thank you for having me. Thank you.